Hello, welcome to another episode of Historified. I'm Jaime.
And I'm Annie.
And on today's episode, the October episode, we are going to be talking about the Johnson House. And I think we can talk a little stuff about some spooky things.
Ooh, yes, we have lots of spooky things that happen here. Let's start with the Johnson House.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
So the Johnson House was built in 1870, and it was originally built by a photographer named John Harmon. And John Harmon was a family man and a photographer who lived here in McKinney. And he actually took a very interesting picture. Remember last month we talked about something?
We did. We talked about Stephen Ballou.
And the trial of Stephen Ballou. And so John Harmon is the man who took Stephen Ballou's final picture.
And we have it. We actually have a copy of it.
We do have a copy of it here.
So that's really neat. It's actually fun. That's crazy how things come around.
Yeah, things come around. And see, McKinney, it's all interlinked.
It is.
So, and then the Mr. Johnson, John Johnson, bought the house.
1878.
1878, and he bought it because he wanted his children to be educated, and the school was close to where they would go.
Isn't it funny how what they would consider close back then? So
Yes.
The school was actually like 2 miles,
Oh, that's right.
right? 2 miles down the street, and that was considered close. That's crazy. Well, at least the schoolhouse that we talk about, the Wilmot Schoolhouse, was
Right.
2 miles down. There were other educational
Opportunities.
in town.
Yes.
So we do know, like on College Street, we talked
Yes.
about that. We do know there was other educational institutions. That's the word I was looking
Yes,
for.
there you go.
In town, but a lot of people did move to this part of town to be in walking distance of the Wilmot Schoolhouse.
Okay.
2 miles.
Yeah. So, what else do we know about John Johnson? John Johnson served in the military during the Civil War.
Otherwise, he was a captain.
He was a captain. John and his wife Polly eloped.
That's right. We know that Polly's father did not agree with their union, and so she slipped away in the middle of the night, and they eloped.
Yes, on horseback. They
That's right.
rode to the Justice of the Peace and eloped, and then they made their way down here from Missouri to Texas, and they eventually moved into what we know as a Johnson House. And he was a really big landowner here in McKinney and the surrounding area, and he also served on the Texas legislature.
Right. I know that when they first moved, you said they were a big landowner, and they owned a really big piece of property just north here of McKinney.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they had lived for quite some time. And there's even a Johnson cemetery.
Yes, where they're buried.
Right. And I believe it started off with one of his sons being married. So they actually have a really sad...
They do have a sad history
they
with their
do.
children.
So of their... Oh, gosh. I can't remember how many children. There were a lot.
I think there were 10.
Was it 10?
I think
I
there
knew
were
it was
10.
double digits, but only how many? 5? 4?
5 made it to
adulthood.
And one, I know this is a really sad story. One of them, when he was, I think, in college up north, was killed by a croquet ball.
Yeah.
They
It
were
was during
playing
a sport,
croquet,
yeah.
and I mean, I guess that ball got flying, and he was killed by it.
Yeah, it was just, there's a lot of sad history back then. But I do know one of his sons passed away, and it was, he said he wanted, when his son was ill, you might know the story better than me, when he grew ill, and he said he wanted to be buried where they would hunt, right?
Right,
Underneath
under a tree.
The
Yes,
tree where
yes.
they would hunt. And I think that's what started the Johnson Cemetery.
Yes.
It might have already been going, but I know it's in that general vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
So Captain Johnson was actually very well known, and he's kind of embedded in McKinney's history, not only by the
Yes.
cemetery, but we've got a Johnson Street, which was named after him.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the, I don't know if he was the main writer, but he had something to do with the Homestead Law.
Yes, he passed the Homestead Law. And he was so passionate that they said when he would get down on that Senate floor to filibuster or to fight for what laws he wanted, he got the name Rutabaga Johnson because he'd get so red that they would call him a rutabaga.
Yeah. I think
So-
anytime because he was very proud that he was a staunch Democrat. He owned the Democrat newspaper, and he was not shy to express his political view and where he stood on specific things that were happening in McKinney or in the state. And he also had another nickname,
Skillet Johnson. And why did he get the name Skillet Johnson?
Well, I don't want to say that he wasn't a nice guy because I didn't know him personally, but
according to stories,
let's just say that he doesn't have the best reputation. He had some homes, some rental property that he rented out, obviously. And there was a family that had at least, might have been a single mother.
It was a single mom.
And she was late paying her rent, and so he went to her house and demanded the rent, and times were tough for her, and so she had said, I can feed my children, or I can pay you rent. So he took the skillet. So he couldn't feed her children. She would have to pay the rent.
Ooh. So that's
the story. Allegedly.
Yes.
We want to say allegedly. These are rumors that have gone down, but we do know that he was very strict in his views. I'm not sure if he was always like that. I know as a young boy, his father died, and he had to take care of his mother and his two sisters at the age of 12, so he had to go to work. And he
educated himself as best as he could.
Right.
He thought education, at least for his boys, was really important.
The crazy thing is that I had read that he actually got a lot of his education also from Polly when they had gotten together, but yet he wasn't a strong believer in the women getting educated.
Right.
Which is kind of weird, right? It kind of seems like, but you were educated a lot from your wife, and so those are the stories that we have on some of the stories surrounding Captain Johnson.
Yes, Captain Johnson. And I know in that house there are a couple wardrobes, and there's also a hall seat.
A hall tree.
A hall tree, thank you. And they would keep apples in there, and that was their thing. If you came to visit them, they would give you an apple or something as a parting gift, or they did do that. Polly did that. So the Johnson family lived there for a while, and then in the 1920s, the Massey family moved in, and so the Massey family were really big McKinney people. I know they had the Massey funeral parlor.
Okay. Were they related to the Johnsons?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think maybe, but I have to research that a little bit more, because I know the last people that lived there, Kate Holder, was related to the Johnsons.
Right.
And so it wouldn't surprise me if the Masseys were related. I haven't gotten into that part of the family tree.
See, that's that interesting thing about history. And while we're digging deep and trying to figure out these stories, it's these records that we're trying to figure out, and it's almost like a map, right?
Right.
And we're trying to figure out what exactly happened, because my understanding was it never left the Johnsons' possession, even when they fell in hard times. And Joseph Delaney had bought the house. Didn't he buy the house? And
he did buy the house and rented it to Kate Holder. Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that when you start diving into history, perhaps your own history and your genealogy, you're just trying to figure out these maps, right? And you're trying to figure out these stories.
I know a lot of Johnsons lived on South Chestnut Street down when we were doing other research. We found a lot of Johnson homes. So it's really kind of hard, but we do know, that the Johnson family held that property for a long time. And then in 1986, when the Guild took it over, they discovered, on the land, when they were re-skirting it, they discovered the cellar, the original cellar. We have the original smokehouse. And so just trying to figure out what was actually part of the Johnson property and what got sold and when is it's interesting.
Yeah, because we do have, so when we bought the Johnson house, that expanded Chestnut Square times 2, right? When we had first purchased the Delaney house, and the cottage, we had their land. That enabled us to bring over the Taylor Inn, the Ferris house, build the schoolhouse, and the blacksmith shop.
Right.
And then we were able to purchase the Johnson house, which is, again, of all the buildings that we own, it's the second house that is sitting where it was built.
Yes.
So the Delaney house that we're in, it sits
It's
where it was built.
Here. Yep.
And the Johnson house sits where it was built. And then we acquired all that property on that side of the village that enabled us to bring over the chapel, get the Dixie store. But then we've got, there's like that really thin property where we had the Bevel house, which was not part of the Johnson property.
No, but it was there.
And then our office building.
Yes.
But it enabled us to expand
yes.
and to grow the village to what it is today.
Yeah. Let's see what else. There's so much stuff going on in my head.
Okay, I have something really fun. So the Johnson house, first off, it's got like an Italianate, like details, right, on the porch. It is our bridal suite. It is where the brides they can get it with a wedding package and they can get ready in there. It's got beautiful picture opportunities in there as well. Just a nice place for the bride and the bridal party to be right before they head over to the chapel or our wedding gardens. But you would see if you go into the Johnson house, it has a lot of wedding details and we've got bridal dresses in there. And it's really just surrounding, love and union and the wedding ceremony.
Yes.
So we have that all set up in there. It is climate controlled. It's one of our buildings that are. You gotta love that, especially in Texas summers when those are, those hot days that are going on. And then what I love about the Johnson house, there's so many things. Where to stop and where to start. The style of the Johnson house is actually reminiscent of Tuck Hill's house. So if you all know who Tuck Hill is, he's a very well-known McKinney resident from the past, and his house is on Virginia, and it almost looks identical to the Johnson house. And the irony I find in that is that we have Tuck Hill's bedroom set in the Johnson house.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy to see when you go by the Tuck Hill house, it looks almost identical of the footprint to the Johnson house, and we have the furniture.
Yeah.
So that's kind of neat.
And then I did find out that when it was purchased and when the Guild took it over, that it was, and I guess still is, the fourth oldest house in McKinney. So that was interesting to discover. So we have the oldest house in McKinney and the Ferris house that you learned last time. And then we also have the fourth oldest house in McKinney. And I believe Taylor Inn is older as well. So we have 3 of the 4 oldest houses in McKinney here on our property.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Interesting things.
It is.
Okay. So now, since it is October, I want to share a couple things. Stories that we've had from people, from brides and from people who work here about the Johnson house and things that kind of have happened.
Are you saying that there are things that go bump in the night?
I think there are. There are things that go bump in the Johnson house.
Not just at night.
No. So Kim Ducote Ferguson, who was our wedding coordinator for 17 years, shared a couple stories with me that one time she was over there in the Johnson house and she put a tablecloth on the round table that's in the dining room and she pushed all the chairs and she made it real straight, and then she left to go do something else, and when she came back, the tablecloth was totally off the table and sitting on one of the chairs.
That's interesting.
She also claims that she has been in that house and the curtains move and open themselves. They were closed, and then when she came back, they were opened. And then there are some bridal stories that have happened there as well.
You're going to scare our brides to be. Good.
Nothing bad has happened. One mother said that her daughter was upstairs kind of walking around, and she looked up and a man was staring down at her from the upstairs. So, yeah, and people have felt touched. Or I know that a bride's mom has said that she sat down in a particular chair in the parlor and she really, really did not feel like she wanted to be there anymore, so she got up and moved.
Okay.
So, do you have any stories?
I do. I do have one story of the Johnson house. I've got more stories of the other houses too. So I don't know. Should I talk about
You need
all
to
of
tell.
them?
Well, talk about your Johnson story, and then we'll talk about the others later.
Okay. Because there is something that we haven't mentioned this month, and we're going to talk about more about it next month for November when we talk about Bobby Younger. But we have a room upstairs of the Johnson house, and it is called Bobby's room. It's dedicated to Bobby Younger, who was in World War II. He was a World War II McKinney son who didn't come home. And so anyway, in case you haven't noticed, I dress in 1940s fashion, right? Just is it obvious? Okay, so it does happen to be one of my favorite rooms. It is my favorite room and all of the property. I'm sorry to say that. Sorry, everybody. But anyway, I've always felt very welcomed in the Johnson house. Okay, I feel great in there, actually. And one day I was walking from this part, from the north end of the village to cross the street, because the Johnson house is on Anthony Street at the corner of Anthony and Chestnut. And I'm about to cross Anthony Street going to the office, and I just happened to look up, and I saw a face in one of Bobby Younger's room windows. I saw a face. There's somebody staring there, and I took a step back because I'm like, who would be in there right now? Is there a tour? Like, who's in there? And I'm staring, because you do like a double take, right? Mm-hmm. So you see the face, you look down, and you go back up, and nobody was there, my double take. So I'm staring, and I'm trying to like move around and try to see if the reflection changes, and it doesn't. And I know it was a face, and I thought that was just the oddest thing, that nobody should be in there. So I went to the office, and I even asked, is anybody in the Johnson house? Oh, no, I don't think anybody's in there. I said, okay, well, I just saw somebody in there, but... So the day went on, the same day, and Kim came to the office and said, I can't get in the Johnson house. The door's locked. The lock won't work. And so it was an office affair. We're all walking over there.
Yeah, we all went over there
to help try to get the Johnson house front door open. And a couple, I don't know who else went up there.
I went over there to try. Yeah.
And so I went over there. This could be just ironic, but I put one step on the Johnson house porch, and the door opened. And I'm like, that's it. I'm going home today.
Unlocked or opened?
It unlocked.
Wow.
It unlocked and it opened. Like, okay.
She's here.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but again, I feel very welcomed in there.
That's
like,
awesome.
I feel incredibly comfortable in there. I could live there. I could live in the Johnson house.
Another interesting thing about the Johnson house is those floors on the bottom floor are original. That went through all the years, we have not replaced them at all. So they're very loved and very scuffed and very, but they're the original. That's the original flooring.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I do know, just to add a little bit to like just the ghost stories and the whole, October, Halloween, spooky time vibe going on. I do know, like in many of these older homes, family members have passed away. Mm-hmm. And we do know that Captain Johnson did pass away in his house. Does that mean it doesn't mean?
It doesn't mean anything, but...
anything in particular, but that's just something, that's part of the history. That's part of the history of the home. I do think that we do have a lot of family members in all of our dwellings that just like to check in from time to time. We tell their story. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would make sense.
Making sure we're doing it right.
That's right.
Okay, one of our favorite things that we do. Favorite things, describe something in the Johnson house that people might not notice. Okay, so I'm going to let you think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but mine is kind of a spooky thing. It is carved out of a particular tree that has a bad past, that people were killed under. There was a massacre.
Yeah, it's the gavel.
Yes. We have a gavel in the Johnson house that came from a tree.
A hanging tree.
The hanging tree. And it also was the site of a massacre that happened in McKinney between some settlers and some Indians.
It was just really kind of like disturbing if you think about it, but it is what it is.
Yes.
It's in the Johnson house. It's a part of history. But it's not really in sight. It's in there.
It's in there. We need to kind of
but it's
pull
not
it out.
something that we're like, oh, hey, look.
Yeah.
Look at this gavel. It's made from from a tree
from
that
a tree,
happened
and
to see the end of some people's existence.
That story is very sad, and
it is sad.
Yeah, but so we have that. So do you have a favorite thing that you can describe?
I don't
besides
know.
Bobby's whole room?
I love Bobby's room. I love
Pick something from that room.
Okay. All right, I do have something.
Okay.
I don't know if it's my most favorite thing, but it's something that I most recently learned, and I did not know about it. And in the room, do you just want me to tell you what it is? Because I wouldn't even know how to give you a clue. There is an RC Cola bottle, and it was Bobby's RC Cola bottle.
I don't think it was his. It's a representation of his bottle.
I thought somebody told me, but I didn't know. So I always saw it on the desk, right? We have a desk set up. It's got a lot of copies of Bobby's last letters and just letters throughout his military career to his mother. And there's an RC Cola bottle, and I just thought it was there for aesthetics, right? But I didn't realize that there was a history to it, and that him and his best friend had a newspaper route. Am I correct?
Yes.
And I didn't know it was a Southern thing either, to where it was RC Cola and a moon pie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that's what you would get together, and you would have an RC Cola and a moon pie. And I guess when they went on their newspaper, their route, they would stop and get an RC Cola, and I could have sworn a moon pie as well, but they took turns on who got the first swig.
Yep.
So, yeah, I just thought that was interesting. It was something I didn't know. It's a personable thing that I think a lot of people can connect with.
Yeah,
and I just didn't know about it. So I'm going to pull that one out.
Yeah. That's it. That's a great story of just camaraderie and just his best friend would bring that up later. Yeah. I've heard of him telling that story. I haven't heard him telling the story, but I've heard of him telling that story about how they take turns every other day. You'd get the first swig out of that with no backwash.
Hopefully. Why would you put that in there? It was such a good moment.
That's why they did it.
So I guess so, yeah. Okay, I'm going to tell a story because then I think you can kind of piggyback on this story.
Okay.
Of what then happened to you not long after that, right? So Annie and I were in the Delaney cottage, and we were working on some new pieces that we had inherited, and we were in the dining room, and we had the front door open. I remember that specifically.
Yes.
And so we were working in the dining room. We were trying to figure out what we were going to session and what we were not going to keep from these pieces that we had received. And it was about the time of tour. So it was a Thursday. It was a Thursday. The same day as tour. I can't do it. It was spooky. It was really, really spooky. Okay. So Annie and I were in the Delaney cottage, and we were working on, we received a collection of pieces that we were working on, and whether or not, on what pieces we were going to accession and what pieces we were not going to keep. That just didn't make sense. And so we were in the cottage, we had the front door open, and it was around tour time on a Thursday. So as we're working, all of a sudden I hear a gentleman's voice come from the front of the house. And I'm thinking, oh, it's our docent. He's there on a tour, and he sees the front door open, and it probably made him unaware on whether he should come inside. So I yell, "It's okay, Mark, it's just us." And nothing. And I'm like, I look at Annie, I'm like, did you hear that? She's just looking at me, and I walk over, but I heard it straight as day. It was there. And I walk over, and there was nobody there, nobody at the front door. And I said, Annie, you didn't hear it? It was a man. There was a man talking. And she's like, no, I didn't hear it. I said, okay, well, I'm telling you right now, I heard a man. But, now that may not sound too much, but then, not too long after that, on another day.
Oh, you weren't even here that day. I was over there kind of straightening up from that, from making sure that everything was straightened up. And I was in there by myself, and I walked in, and I was in the dining room, and I hear footsteps, like heavy footsteps coming from upstairs. And there is nobody that goes upstairs because it's not very safe to be up there. And I just went, okay. And I turned around and went out, and I immediately texted Jamie. I told her that there were footsteps above me in the Delaney cottage.
And I said, were they like a man's? And she's like, yes, they were heavy. I'm like, I told you there's a man.
So, yep. And
so the next time we went over, you're like, I'm not going over there without you. I'm not going over there by myself.
Well, okay. So my story about the Delaney cottage is when I first started volunteering, I would do school tours. And back then, each person would get a house and you'd kind of be the expert of that house for the school tour. And that's the house that I always did. So I was in there by myself a lot, waiting for the kids to come. And then about 2 months after I'd been in there, I heard the story that the daughter, Annie Mary Delaney, passed away in that house. And that just kind of, I was like, oh, well, that's nice. I'm Annie, and Annie died in here. And so I've always felt a connection to that house, but I had never heard footsteps that heavy up there ever. So that kind of, it freaked me out. You get freaked out.
Yeah. Yeah, when you like just don't expect something like that. And a lot of times, we're going into these buildings and not always alone. Sometimes it's just things, it's that unexpected. You're just expecting to go into this empty, quiet house, and then all of a sudden, you hear something or you see something.
Right.
I feel like most of my experiences have been audio, except for a couple visual, like in the Johnson house window. Yeah, I think that's not even my craziest one, but it's pretty up there.
Yeah.
I'd have to say my craziest one was in the Taylor Inn.
Oh, really?
That was I feel like that one, I had an experience in the Taylor Inn that really just gave me the goosebumps. And I almost had my tour like running for the hills. You want to hear it?
Yes. Don't leave me hanging.
Okay. It was a Thursday. It was. Is there something about Thursdays now? Oh, I'm going to look into that. But it was a tour, and I was taking a tour around, and we went to the Taylor Inn, and I opened the door. And as soon as I opened the door, and I'm telling him the history, all of a sudden, a man very loudly said, hello. And all of us stopped. I stopped talking. My tour was just like, what? And so I'm like, hello? And then the man said, hello? They started stepping back out of the house. I'm like looking around, like, hello? Is there somebody in here? Next thing you know, it's quiet. There was nothing. I'm walking around the bottom. They would not come in the house.
Wow.
And so I had to play it cool, and I'm going to admit to our Historified audience that I did tell a little fib because I didn't want them to be scared. I'm like, oh, it's construction. The construction workers in the back, it's just them. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. There was no way. It was loud and clear. And it sounded like it was coming from upstairs, which we don't go upstairs in the Taylor Inn because it's just not safe. It's not the safest. But yeah, I had goosebumps. And
wow.
I salvaged the tour.
There
and they
you go.
went inside. But you can see that they were like...
After Chase and Charlie were gone, too. Chase
Yes.
and Charlie were our goats. Mm-hmm. And they lived right behind the Taylor Inn.
Yep.
And so every now and then you'd hear something. And goats can kind of sound human sometimes. But, yeah, no, that was after they were gone.
All right, if we had goats that said hello...
Be very rich.
Yeah, I think we would be coming at you from a mansion with our talking goats. No, they were gone. And there were workers that were in the parking lot, but they weren't even close. This was clear as day. Somebody in the house, it was a man, and he said hello. And he said hello twice. And I wasn't the only one who heard it, like in the Delaney cottage. They heard it too. And they were like, I'm not going in there. It was crazy. It was the craziest thing.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm telling you, I don't think that there's a building here that there are, that I have not had an experience at. Because I'm just not, I have not had an experience in the chapel, but I'm hardly in there.
And you probably wouldn't in the schoolhouse because that's a replica.
I did, and it was recent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You want to hear it?
Yes, I haven't heard this one.
This is going to go along with the Annie Mary theory.
Okay.
So
I remember that.
We have a theory because this side of the property was owned by the Delaneys, and Annie Mary was in the cottage as a child, which would have been where the Delaney house now sits. That she probably ran around all around out here, right? Mm-hmm. This was their play area. This was their property. So there is a theory that she's running around the property. We do have our schoolhouse that is a replica. And just like you, I thought, well, there's no way we're going to ever have an experience in the schoolhouse. I've never had one. I've never felt the EBGBs, nothing. No goosebumps, nothing. I went in there one day, and it was not that long ago. And
was it a Thursday?
You know what? I don't think so. But it could have been. I don't remember the day of the week because it wasn't a tour. That's the only reason I can remember Thursdays, right? And I went in there and I was just straightening up. It was after one of our camps. It could have been a Thursday. Oh my goodness. Because our camps run Tuesday through Thursday, and it was after the week of camp. It could have been a Thursday. It could have been a Friday. Anyway, I was in there just making sure everything was straightened. And all of a sudden, I heard a child running through the gravel, right? And up the stairs to the door. I heard the footsteps. I even went over and I opened the door. And I was like, hello. There's nobody there. And that was the schoolhouse.
Wow.
And it was a kid. It was, you can hear the difference between an adult and a child running.
Right.
This was a child pace, footprints up the stairs to the door. Kid you not, no one was there. There was not enough time for a child to be gone like that because I was at that door in 1 second and opening it just to say hello to who was outside the schoolhouse. And there was no one. No one.
Wow.
Which is why you all need to go on ghostly hauntings.
Yes. You need to experience that with Jim. You go and it's totally dark, and you go around the property and you hear the stories, and you just kind of investigate houses in the dark.
Now, we didn't give anything away for ghostly hauntings on this because these are our personal stories.
Yes.
Jim, who is the gentleman who does the ghostly haunting tours, he would be your tour guide for that with his buddy. And they've actually done investigations. And so they talk about their findings, what proves, how they prove it to possibly be paranormal if they can't disprove it or debunk it. And
they try to debunk it first.
Right.
They don't just say, oh, that was, paranormal.
They're like,
that was just, the wind or.
Yeah, they give a lot of examples, which is great. I mean, it's very honest. But you do get to go in some of our buildings, and you'll go in the buildings in pitch darkness, and you'll even do almost like your own type of investigations where you're walking through the houses and you're being very silent and you could hear something, and that's where most of our stories come from. We're just going about our day and it happens. And so you're not going to hear our stories on it, but now you have our stories. So when you go on the Ghostly Hauntings tour, you're going to know some of our personal stories and then get to see some of the investigations that have been done. It's really fun. We have repeat
all the time. Yeah.
All the time.
It's a fun thing.
But again, it sells out. So I don't know.
Especially in October.
Right? So right now you could be going, oh, I'm going to check it out, and it could be all sold out.
But we do have it every month until the end of April, right?
Yes.
Yes. And then they take May, June, July off, and August off because it's so hot.
It's just too hot.
And then other things coming up in November. Jaime has something special. What's happening in November, Jaime?
Okay, Chestnut Square is doing a Salute to Veterans event where I will be singing in a World War II USO kind of style. And it's a little nerve-wracking because I've sung a lot here and there in my life, but never like to an audience like this is going to be.
She sings all the time in our office. Sometimes we'll break out into song.
We do. We always break out in song.
It's kind of like a musical.
It is. It is a musical in our office. Yes. But, I am a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. I'm super nervous. But everybody here in the community that supports Chestnut Square and has affiliations with us, or even those that just come once in a while, they're really great people. And I feel like if I'm going to do this, which has kind of been a little bit of a goal of mine to get over this stage fright and to do it. But I feel like if there's some people to do it to, it's the Chestnut Square community and veterans. And I'm excited, but I'm nervous as all heck.
That's going to be November 7th.
It is. It's a Thursday.
Yes. Oh, a Thursday.
Oh,
Jamie likes her Thursdays.
This one's going to be good.
Yes.
It's going to be great.
And we also, in November, Thanksgiving. And then in December, just so that you know things that are coming up, we're going to have a Prairie Adventure Camp. But it's going to be December 17th, 18th, and 19th. So if you homeschool or if you know somebody who'll be off at that time, make sure to check out that. That'll be a fun camp for kids. And then we have our holiday tour of homes that's
you
coming
talk
up.
like, are you kidding? Who is not ready for that?
I'm so ready.
I know.
Oh, I'm ready for cold weather.
Sweater weather. Sweater weather. I swear, I feel like we're going to be saying that on every
From now
episode
on.
up until we're actually
Yes.
wearing sweaters.
Yes, we'll be doing the summer podcasts in sweaters.
That's right.
Just kind of follow us, go on social media, check out our Facebook, check out our website. Make sure that you subscribe to Historified at Chestnut Square so that we can send you notices and things, and you can come and be part of the Chestnut Square family.
I mean, we have so many things that are going on. I don't even think we mention them all. Well, a lot of times also when we go on here, we're still in the planning stages, right, for some of these events. And so your best bet is to go on social media, is to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and check out our Historified podcast every month, because we're going to give you as much information as we can. But to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, you're really going to see when these other events unfold and what all they entail, when they're happening, and when you can get tickets.
Yes. If you have any questions or you have any comments about what we discussed today, please reach out to us via text or email.
Just
reach out.
Yeah, or reply to this YouTube. You know what I would actually really love? I would love to hear your own personal ghost stories. It is spooky time.
It is. So please send them in. Yeah.
So yeah, just let us know. And if you've got experience, if you've been on our ghostly haunting tour, let us know your experience. And is that all we got?
Yeah.
Happy haunting.
Happy Halloween.
And come back next month for November, because it's going to be a great month, and we're going to talk about Bobby Younger.
Oh, it's going to be a good one. Make sure you come back. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.